Excuse the interruption, but I'm Peyton Halverson. Johnny, did you hear that Megan Fox and Brian Austin Green have legally separated?
I'm Johnny Heisler. That's great news. Now there's absolutely no reason for Megan not to return my calls anymore.
Has she ever returned one of your calls?
Well, I've had tons of problems with my cell phone lately. Once that gets fixed, I think we'll be hooking up quite regularly.
Has she ever written to you?
Well, does a restraining order count? Hello, boys and girls. Today we have fortune teller, cop time, and what's the word. But as always, we start the show off with headlines. Peyton, the girls had a great final week. First down in Carrington, then defeating number 3 Puck River and number 2 Rugby. How'd you guys do it?
Well, we played phenomenal defense in all of those games, but especially in Park River and Rugby. Both of the top 10 games were on the road, and we were always in the lead, except for the first minute against Rugby. It was a good week to see where we were ranked coming into tournament time. I think we proved that we were truly one of the top teams in the state.
And by winning those 2 games, if you do make it to state, you are pretty much assured a number 2 seed, or possibly even the number 1 seed if Thompson doesn't make it.
Meanwhile, the hockey team has lost 6 of their last 7 games. After starting out the season 3-0, they are now 8-11 and the 6th seed in the East. Johnny, are the Firebirds pretty much out of the state hockey tournament picture?
They're a hard team to figure out. They've only had 2 wins at home this season. They still have to play North Fargo and West Fargo, and both of those games are on the road. North hasn't won a game all season, and we only lost to West Fargo by 1 goal earlier, so maybe they can sweep these last 2 games and get some momentum going into the postseason. It's possible that they could jump to the 4 seed for the EDC tournament, but it's a stretch. Peyton, I may be biased, but it seems to me that the boys' team is doing better than anyone was expecting this season. How do the fans see it?
This is a Jekyll and Hyde team for sure. You played a god-awful game against Langdon.
Which we still won.
Yeah, you managed to pull that one out. And then you had 3 good games against some good teams. You've had a tough time getting going in the first half of some games, and that's not going to work when you get into the tournaments. Hoopster picked you 8th in the region, but if you play to your potential for an entire game instead of just 1 half, I see a reasonably good chance of you making it to the region championship. Too bad you lost out on the number 1 seed for the district. How did that happen?
Because of a 3-way tiebreaker. All we needed was to stay within 9 points of St. John. They hit a bucket at the buzzer to win by 11, so we ended up with a 3rd seed.
Maybe you should have played some defense for the last 2 seconds.
You must be talking about the last 5 seconds, because that's how long it took to get the clock going. He took the pass, tied his shoelaces, combed his hair, took a couple dribbles, gave a head fake, and then got the shot off before the 2 seconds were up. But I'm not even bitter. Time for a break so we can get ready for fortune teller.
Simsalabim and open sesame, boys and girls. It's fortune teller time. Let's get right to it and take the first call.
Hi guys, this is JC. Do you see Stephanie Miller making All-State this year?
This has been a breakout season for Stephanie, but it's hard to get the recognition around the state in your first year. She's had some monster games this season, so she's getting her name out there. She might make it this year, but I would say her chances are much better next season when more teams will be familiar with what she can do. Next call.
What's up? This is Andrew. Do you foresee a trip to the state tournament for the hockey team?
Didn't you listen to the headlines? When we play the EDC tournament, the top 4 teams will go to state. We are a bubble team, and if we have a good tournament, we will get in, but it will be just as likely for us not to make it.
Hockey people always say that the only thing you need in the postseason is a hot goalie. If Ness gets hot, anything can happen. Last call.
Hi, Johnny and Peyton. Do you see anyone defeating the 4 Winds boys teams in the region tournament?
Well, nobody expected 4 Winds to lose 2 years ago either, and Alex gave them the beatdown, but that was then, and this is now. I just don't see any team being able to give them a run in our region this year. I'd be surprised if they don't win every tournament game by at least 20. Time for another break so we can bring up our new police recruits.
Welcome to the precinct, boys and girls. I'm Officer Linseth along with Officer Miller. For the first time this year, we're playing a game called Good Cop, Bad Cop. Let's get to the first case. Should we play in the Ramsey tournament?
I'm playing the good cop here. The Ramsey is a good way to start out the season with 3 quick games to see what you need to work on early in the season. It's also a good way to get some experience for the younger players who are not used to the pace and competition of varsity basketball. It lets you see where you rank among the teams in the area. After all, we will see many of these teams in the district and region tournaments.
Well, I think it's a waste of time. This year, our closest game in the Ramsey girls tournament was 15 points. If we weren't playing in that tournament, we could schedule 2 high-quality teams later in the season to see where we are instead of playing teams that we're going to play later in the season anyways. I think it would be better to play some tough teams to close out the regular season so we know what we could work on for the postseason. Is it good sportsmanship to run up the score against a poor team?
Winning a basketball game by 50 points is totally unnecessary. Heimers brought this up on preps, and it started quite a discussion. Your starters can sit on the bench for a couple of quarters in these games. It's not like they have to do this every game. It will just happen a few times a year. Teams can ease up on the press and slow down on the offense a little bit and still be able to learn and get better as a team. You can do that without totally embarrassing your opposition.
I have no problem with running up the score. If you don't like getting pounded, practice and get better. You can't expect a good team to sit their starters for over half a game and lose out on the valuable experience just because their opponents aren't up to the snuff. Good teams have players who put in a lot of practice over the summer and off-season. They shouldn't just sit on the bench just because they're so good. And while we're talking about preps, is preps even relevant anymore?
Preps is too old school. There can be days without anyone posting on any of the threads. There have been only 2 new topics this year in the entire hockey section. Time has passed preps by. This is the video age, and preps doesn't even allow photos, let alone videos. Even YouTube is better than preps. At least you can watch something on that.
Well, I think there is a place for a user forum like preps. Preps is a place where you can have a serious discussion, unlike player bashing like on Twitter account at ND Sports Confessions. People complain about posts getting deleted on preps, but at least the discussions are civilized.
But preps is so boring.
Let me read a few posts from ND Confessions. Stanley boys basketball is pretty legit this year. Which Class B team has the best C team? Belcourt boys have some quick little fellas. John Reitland nearly posterized 3 people last night.
What's your point?
What's my point? This is pure drivel. At least on preps you can get some reasoned discussions and opinions. Case closed. Time for another break. When we come back, we'll have What's the Word?
The Stars are back, and we've changed the set to something more fitting for a manly man. Just in time for What's the Word? Statboy Miller, what's the first one?
Johnny's 3-quarter shot was...
For anyone else, I would use the word luck. But since it was you making the shot, I'll say it was dumb luck. You could try that shot 100 more times and not make a single one. The whole crowd was stunned when it went in. Jake Coolin almost had a heart attack. He was so surprised. You could never do it again.
Well, it was good enough to make it on Cube-tastic Plays of the Week. For those of you who saw the donkey basketball game, you saw me make the half-court shot when sitting on a donkey. So making that shot in a regular basketball game was nothing. Next.
The power outage in the Rolla game was...
My word is inexcusable. This school needs a 24/7 generator that comes on automatically during power outages during basketball games. If it's just a regular school day shutdown, no big deal. But what if Riley Legacy was heading down the court on a fast break when the lights went out? He goes straight through a wall. That's a risk we cannot take. A new wall would be very expensive.
My word is meaningless. Within 15 minutes, the lights were back on. Compare that to waiting an hour and a half in the freezing Burdick Arena, waiting for the Zamboni to come out and clear the ice. Quit your whining. Next.
Not scheduling the Grafton girls basketball team was...
My word is disappointing. Grafton used to be a big doubleheader on the schedule when both the boys and the girls went up against them. Both girls' teams were in the top 10 this year, so that would have been a good matchup. Now we're just left with the boys' game.
My word is unimportant, at least for this season. It doesn't make any difference. We've already played and beat the number 2 and number 3 teams in the state. What would we prove by beating the number 10? That's it for What's the Word. So now it's time for the big finish. A get well soon shout out to Brenna Bowman, who got her nose broken in practice by Maya Halverson. She'll have to wear a face mask for the remainder of the season.
And another get well soon to Alec Miller, who got a bit roughed up by his donkey. That's what you get for standing behind it.
One person who hasn't been injured for one time in his life is Devin Dugdale. Great job on staying healthy for 3 weeks in a row now.
Congrats to Jamestown Jimmy players Jake Hagler and Christian Kroving, both North Star alumni. Jake was named Conference Player of the Week, and Christian had his biggest game as a Jimmy when he played over 20 minutes and scored 11 points in a win against the number 20 Bellevue.
And congratulations to Jaden Komrosky for scoring his 1,000th point against St. John. Too bad our camera wasn't working, so you'll never be able to prove it. That's it. We're all out of time. We'll try and do better next time.
Good night, knuckleheads.
Good night, Can Do.